Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton and Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. We want to thank you all for listening to Charlton and Big C Sports, the $1 Million Show. Today is July 19th, 2016, and we come to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. Over 250 million people in the listening platform. And I want to say bienvenidos to all of our Latin American audience. So we thank you so much for tweeting in all throughout the world, as well as London, England, Berlin, Germany, and the great country of Canada. You know, Big C, we also get tweets coming in from Australia. I think that's the south part of the earth, Big C. And also, of course, the great United States of America. Big C, how's it going down south in your neck of the woods, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I'm feeling a little scared today. We can call this thunder and lightning, and I might have to crawl up underneath the table. You know, I'm not as brave as I used to be. You know, we've been getting a deluge of rain the past couple of days, and that's always appreciated anywhere you are in America. But sometimes you get a little bit too much. But, you know, it's always a wonderful day to talk about sports, to talk about the world. We got great politics going on right now. But, you know, being able to be on the show with you, you know, and we be able to go out and share to our listening audience. And like I said yesterday, we got about 35% plus female listeners and really appreciate the intelligence of these women listening to the show.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, Big C, that's so important because we have the Republican convention going on in the great state of Ohio, and I think that's where LeBron James' territory is. in Cleveland, they're having that convention tonight. And, of course,
LeBron and Donald Trump hanging out having dinner?
Hey,
that's an interesting thing.
Maybe LeBron can make Donald some money. I think that's the only reason he wants to hang out with African-American athletes, Big C. But I do want to say the great Michelle Obama, she had one of her speeches plagiarized by Melania Trump, Donald Trump's wife, and it's funny how politics, no matter who you believe in, but when you plagiarize someone, you're just supposed to give them credit. You don't come out and say, hey, this is my thought, Big C. So they criticize President Obama, and then they copy his wife's speech, and at the same time, they think people are stupid enough not to pay attention, Big C. So the world of politics and the world of sports, we blend it all together. Big C, you've been doing this for over 40 years as an all-pro athlete, and also television and radio on the national level. And with iHeartRadio, what we want to bring to iHeartRadio, and we hear it from so many people giving us feedback. And I want to thank all the people who are reaching out to us because we're on one of the largest platforms on the planet. So, Big C, I just want to bring this to mind. We call you the Mystic because people keep saying, who is this Big C? And I said, well, he's the same guy that made Colonel Sanders' recipe. So you tell me first, and I'll tell you who Big C is. Who is Big C, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I'm the guy right now looking in the mirror trying to figure out who I am, you know. I'm trying to keep this body in great summer shape, you know, to walk up and down the street so I just blend in with people. I try not to take my shirt off at this later stage in life. But, you know, I'm a guy who's enjoying what we're doing, Charlton. I appreciate the opportunity to share with America and the rest of the world. You know, some of the things that I've gained and understood in sports and even socialism over the years, Charlton. And I think it's tremendous because when you were talking about plagiarism, you know, and for the past 6 months, I have heard us be plagiarized on ESPN in the morning and the afternoon, Fox Sports News. I mean, we get it, you know, it's what happens. I mean, I guess what they say in the world of sports, she ain't trying. It even goes there in broadcasting. You got people cheating with somebody else's work, trying to make it theirs. Well, but you know what's so great about our program, Charlton, is that we're unscripted. Everybody else is scripted. We're unscripted. We're real talk.
Well, Big C, I appreciate that very much. And I do want to thank, you know, sometimes people say, don't forget where you came from. And I remember when I got caught up in the sports game, Big C, and whether you're in Australia, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Dubai or in Russia, you know.
Well, maybe we'll get a little rugby and cricket in while we're doing the show, Joe.
And we'll have some tea as we're across the pond in England as well, Big C. And I think so much the intelligence of the platform of electronics and media. And I know there's an Edward R. Murrow Award for excellence in sports, and, you know, writing and broadcast journalism. So I want to say this to the young people of America and old people too, Big C, because
I appreciate that.
I'm speaking to everybody from kindergarten to the AARP, Big C. But on a serious note, this also is about how do you reach out to young people. We have this thing called Black Lives Matter, and we have the conventions going on, the Democrats and the Republicans. When you look at the world of media, Big C, the only reason you and I can talk unlike the caveman is because technology. Technology is created through education. So as people start talking about what matters and what athletes should get back, I know on the ESPYs we had just recently with LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, and also Chris Paul. And I'm so proud of these guys for coming up saying that all lives matter, and we want to make sure that we end this stupid violence. But more important than that, we have to teach people to be educated so they can go out and become the next entrepreneurs, Big C. And I think our show is about that as much as it is about who won the game last night. Big C, your thoughts on that, because you brought it up to made it to my consciousness, Big C.
Well, Charlton, it seems so long ago that the ESPYs was on when everybody stood up on stage wanting to be an advocate. I haven't heard anything from them since, Charlton. So one night of glory, I guess that was supposed to suffice. You know, they have these town hall meetings and these gatherings and these athletes and even others being these so-called activists.
Yeah.
You know, but they're talking about stopping violence, which is the key to what they're talking about. Charlton, I haven't heard anybody talking about education.
Yeah.
Educate yourself. Learn how to be sociable. These are the things that people are not talking about. Even the athletes, when we look at athletes that are getting in trouble,
yeah,
we talk about the lack of education about a lot of people look at an athlete, Charlton, and look past that he didn't graduate college. Some of them didn't even go to college.
Yeah.
Because they make this copious amount of money, Charlton.
Yeah.
But the thing they have to look at, and you know, you talked about Harry Edwards, Kareem, Jim Brown, and these people talking about having a social conscience.
Yeah.
A social conscience comes from education, Charlton.
Yeah.
So these athletes have to do more than deposit checks in the bank.
Yeah.
You have to be knowledgeable of what you're doing. You have an accountant to tell you how much money you have because half of them can't count.
Yeah.
And wonder why they end up broke at the end of their career because the accountant's got it all.
Wait.
You got to sit around and look and be educated about what's going on in society. You know, I would dare to take 1,000 of America's professional athletes right now and sit down and have them talk politics.
Yeah.
That's where we are socially.
Yeah.
Do they understand what they're not voting for? How many athletes vote, Charlton? That's the thing. They say, well, my vote doesn't matter because I'm rich already. It doesn't make any difference who's in the White House. It does.
Yeah.
And when athletes take that role, Charlton, and tell the public, well, it doesn't matter, then the public follows suit because they're so influenceable in society, Charlton.
Well, Big C, that is definitely so true. And speaking of true in society, this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Escalade, the standard of the world. And you can only get it there brand new at your NorCal Cadillac dealers. And when you go by and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, I want to bring this up to you because Charlton and Big C Sports is more than just about the scores. It's about entrepreneurship. The legacy I want to leave 100 years from now, hopefully there will be 1,000 people that said, you know what, just like ESPN inspired some people, Charlton and Big C Sports inspired me to go out and get my own program. And speaking of getting our own program, we even have some of the best rappers in the world that are making songs for Charlton and Big C Sports. And here's just about a little bit of what we talk about on Charlton and Big C Sports. This is one of our theme songs by the Mr. Anon. Here we come, Big C. Charlton Big C. That's now I'm trying to dance, but I forgot to rub my body down on this Ben Gay or this muscle cream. But it does have a nice beat, and just like that song, Big C. And what I appreciate about what we have our own theme song, and there's so many other things coming. But I do want to credit you with this because I want to bring this up today. I know we're talking about college football coming up, and I just can't wait. I know USC is getting ready to go and beat down Alabama. In fact, Lynn Swan.
South Carolina, you're talking about University of South Carolina. They'll be okay.
No, the Trojans, you know, the one with the white horse. I think it's funny, and I don't want to let this go because you're the one who told me about Nick Saban, how much control he has at the University of Alabama program. And I said USC, they went out and hired Lynn Swan because they scheduled this game. And Lynn Swan, he doesn't believe that athletes should get paid, even though he has a multi-million-dollar contract as the new athletic director at USC, which happens to be in the heart of South Central Los Angeles, Big C. So just again, as we get into talking about the topics today with sports and the Olympics and some baseball and football coming up, touch again why it's so important with this Black Lives Matter, why paying money to people, it does help them alleviate some of the pressures that are caused financially. So against guys like Lynn Swan, why should they get paid again, Big C?
Charlton, if you're not hustling for money, then you have an air of comfort about you. You look at anybody in American society. At the end of the month, basically everybody has the same criteria they must meet. They must take care of those monthly notes.
Yeah.
That they to keep that roof over their head, Charlton, to keep the food in, to keep the car in the garage.
Yeah.
And so when you say that an athlete doesn't need it, that, you know, as far as him going into the D.C., having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's all that he needs.
Yeah.
But when you look at the hulking size of a lot of these college athletes nowadays, Charlton, when these rules were established, you know, you could probably find a lineman in college who weighed 200 pounds.
Yeah.
You can't find a lineman in college now, Charlton, that weighs less than 300 pounds.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're going to need some substance to maintain their body.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you got a snack and you got to have a little extra, and the dining hall is closed on campus, how do these young men survive? You have to give them something to help them out. And so many college athletes now have children.
Yeah.
You know, how do they support their families and maintain a class? So you got to have at least 12 credits. You know, and not only that, you got to participate in practice and work out for your sport.
Yeah.
So how do you help these young men out? A lot of them have young families, as well as just trying to carry the caseload, the workload into the class environment.
Yeah, well, Big C, that's so important because also, you know, we talk about USC and Alabama. Now, I haven't heard any trouble from the guys from California because most kids in California, they're finished with surfing and you're kind of worn down from the surfing, so you don't have time to get in trouble. But I look at the University of Alabama and Nick Saban. I think he makes, is it $5 million or $7 million now, Big C?
About $7 million. He live in your neighborhood. I think you guys live down the street from each other.
Okay, so $7 million for Nick Saban. And it seems like every week, Big C, you cover the SEC, there's always some kids from Alabama in trouble. Now he's decided to suspend a player that was a starter last year. I won't bring in the minor's name, but here's a guy that he didn't get out of trouble because a lot of these guys get in trouble, Big C, and they're always there to bail them out. So why should athletes get paid? This is my opinion. And it's just like Jim Brown talked about, just like Harry Edwards talked about, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and also it's what Muhammad Ali stood for, is about being able to earn money for your labor. You have young people doing foolish things, and everybody does in every race and color, male and female. But because these guys played football, they attracted the attention of the administration, guys like Nick Saban, that would simply make a phone call, Big C, to law enforcement because they could get favors, and they would get guys out of trouble. Well, now they let someone kind of go out on the olive branch and kind of fend for himself because they want to show they're tough on players who break the law. Well, it couldn't be anything worse further from the truth, Big C. These athletes that get in trouble and they get dismissed by the universities, what's going to happen to them if they don't have money, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, they get dismissed by the University of Charlton that tossed back into society without an education. And you got a very frustrated, angry young individual now. And because he's been labeled, generally he cannot get into another university. And if he's exceeded 2 years of eligibility use, he can't go into a junior college. So he's lost in that wasteland, Charlton. There's countless numbers of athletes, former athletes, that this has happened to. You have these sacrificial lambs to show, hey, I'm tough. We can get rid of an individual. And it's what we talked about before.
Yeah.
These college players are dispensable, Charlton.
Yeah.
That they mean nothing. It's just meat on the hoof.
Yeah.
When you need to replace somebody, you replace somebody. And this happens every year, sometime on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And so when these young men have been uneducated, they have no income, and you toss them out of the street, they basically become homeless other than being able to go back home.
Yeah.
It's like anybody else on the street. They're impoverished, and now they're looking for a way to survive.
Yeah.
And these people are hawking people generally, so they can take physical advantage of a lot of people in life, Charlton. But this is how callous these universities are, is that we can just toss you away like a piece of paper in the trash to recycle.
Well, Big C, you know, there's always people you can count on when you need something. And this guy is 6'5", 345 pounds. He's just a young man, so I hope he gets help. And unlike Johnny Manziel, when people get in trouble, a lot of them get cut from the team or suspended, or sometimes if they're black, they get thrown in front of the judge. And what do the judges do with young black men? they'd rather give them time than probation. That's a fact. That's part of the Kerner Commission. It still goes on in 2016, but also what's going on in 2016. There's so many people reaching out to help us. And I also want to thank Becca Wright, because we started with her back at Salem Media. She's also been making some connections in media, so I appreciate that, from the UFC and the world of mixed martial arts and also fitness training. And I also want to say, Big C, that this segment is sponsored by the California Lottery. Boy, what a buck could do for you. I think tonight's Mega Million, Big C, is going to be won by Charlton and Big C. And I keep saying that, Big C, but it's $315 million. And I could use it to buy some more of that good old moonshine you've been shipping out to me, Big C. And I want to thank you for that very much. And again, if you're listening to Charlton and Big C Sports, you can listen to us on the iHeartRadio network. We are worldwide every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And also, because of the election tonight, we're actually running a little bit late on the program just so we can have some time to follow the election as well. Back to our normal time tomorrow. But again, Big C, I want to bring this up because this is so important to us. Now, I talk to a lot of law enforcement, and I talk to a lot of African-American parents. I talk to Caucasian parents. I talk to Latino parents. One thing that I find so common when I talk to black parents, and I'm one myself, so I'm not going to make myself excused from this. There's so much attention paid to someone who's going to play sports. And I love the sports business. I won't say I'm a sycophant to it because I believe in being intelligent. But for these parents out here, you just saw what happened with Nick Saban, the coach at Alabama. And we know they're going to lose to USC. But here he is, just suspended a player over an indiscretion that's been going on many times. But now the media is on his case. So now he's going to try to show he's being tough on the players. And I think that's a farce, because the parents who allow their kids to go to any university, not just Alabama or USC or any of these programs, Big C, I think the players get the shaft. And that's unfortunate, because it happens all too often, Big C. I just want to know, what would you say to these parents, no matter what color they are, when coaches show up and want to recruit their kids, Big C? It's so important. You brought it up before. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, what are you going to do for my son's future?
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to take him to practice. You're going to get him in games. But what are you going to do for him educationally? Can you guarantee me that he is going to get a degree in 4 years at your university, or are you going to allow him that fifth year to finish up his academic schedule?
Yeah.
These are the things that parents have to ask about, but coaches come in and say, hey, we got all 13 games on television this year. We've won the conference championship 4 out of the last 5 years. You're going to get a championship ring.
Yeah.
We're sponsored by Nike or Adidas or Under Armour.
Yeah.
You're going to get to see your son play. We might be able to help you get to a game and things. But no, let's go in and talk about our graduation ratio.
Yeah.
I would love to see Nick Saban walk in and say, hey, I've graduated 97% of my players at the University of Alabama since I've been there.
You want Nick Saban to tell a fib, Big C? I thought that's called the good old white lie down in the good old boy South, Big C, right?
Well, he doesn't lie. He walks in and says he graduates 7 to 9% of his players.
Yeah, yeah.
He just flips the numbers around, okay?
Yeah.
And that's what's going on in these mega conferences, Charlton. When you talk about the money, today, South Carolina offered the University of Marshall, which is the home of Randy Moss, Chad Pennington, Brandon Marshall, great NFL players, wide receivers, and quarterbacks, $1.8 million to $1.6 million to play in South Carolina in 2016 to be a whipping boy. Now, we talk about players being able to receive money.
Yeah,
they're paying the university and the athletic program $1.6 million, Charlton, for one game.
Wow.
One game to come in and play.
Yeah.
Hopefully not win.
Yeah.
This is the type of money that's tossed about in college football. So if you can pay a visiting team, Charlton, $1.6 million to come into your house and play in South Carolina, seats about 90,000 people who generally have sellouts on their home games.
Yeah.
What part of this does the athlete receive, Charlton?
Nothing.
What part will go out to help the athlete's future? But that lets you know the kind of money that's generated in a game when you pay somebody to come by your house like you do and just hang out for a couple hours. and that kind of money is passed back and forth. So, when we talk about the athletes and what they mean to universities financially, is that they're supporting everybody and everything else but yet you really don't want to support them, Charlton.
Well, Big C, you brought it up before how Nike makes so much money, and nothing wrong with making money. Make all the money you want to make. In fact,
free enterprise in America, Charlton, and we're witnessing it every day.
You got to witness it every day, but you also have to protect your investments. And when it comes to protecting your investments, United Labor Insurance, working with the unions all across the United States, guaranteed $100,000 life insurance, no medical questions. If you have a labor union or a group, contact Charlton and Big C Sports by Twitter or Facebook and reach out to us, and we'll let you know how it works. They're also endorsed by the American Cancer Society and the American Heart Association. You can't beat that. No medical questions, period. Also by Goosehead Property and Casualty. We beat about 98% of the people when it comes to a quote. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports, also part of the iHeart Radio Network. Big C, I want to bring this up because it's also something that I just think is funny, and they keep talking about it. Power and consciousness is not always mutually exclusive. You can have one without the other. Charles Barkley was talking with a few other athletes and how they thought that Durant was taking advantage of the system because he's going to play for the Golden State Warriors now. There's no guarantee they're going to win a championship. When Karl Malone left Utah and went to the Lakers, they didn't win a championship, Big C. We know that Shaq and Kobe had some issues there. But players should be able to do whatever they want to do because they are grown men. But I want to bring this thing up too, because I brought this up and you brought it to my mind. I told you read a lot more than I do, and I did a lot like the Donald Trump's wife, how she plagiarized Michelle Obama. Well, I kind of plagiarized you, Big C, because you said how Nike gets free advertisement. There's an Arizona State versus Oregon football game being played on TV on ESPN. Big C, is a repeat. I thought I slept in after drinking that moonshine you gave me and missed the college football season. But they're running replays. And what I've noticed more than Oregon and Arizona State is that Nike, the swoosh, is on everything. So Phil Knight is so smart, he's getting free advertisement. And I want Charlton and Big C Sports to get free advertisement. But he does it because he donates to athletic apparel. Could you imagine if instead of giving out tennis shoes, they gave out computers? How much more would that help the inner city youth, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, he even has the inner city youth buying his product. I mean, the colleges get it for free, the professionals get it for free.
Yeah.
But he's forcing the little kids to go out there and buy it because they want to emulate Charlton.
Exactly.
The guys that they see on television. So you want to have the Nike gloves on, you want to have the Nike cleats, the Nike wristbands. But Phil Knight is a marketing genius, or whoever's running his advertising department is Nike.
Yeah.
You put it out, Charlton, if you look at the Super Bowl, last year.
Yeah.
And you think about what it costs for a commercial at the Super Bowl, right? and I'm going to say it was around $3.5–4 million, depending on the time it ran.
Yeah.
Now, every play in that game of the Super Bowl for 3.5 hours had a Nike emblem.
Yeah.
So you think about the commercials that are 30 seconds long. The play clock runs 40 seconds in the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay, so who is the most intelligent person or corporation involved in the Super Bowl? That's Nike.
Yeah.
Because they got several $1 billion in free advertising. So why do they need to run a commercial? They don't.
Yeah.
Because all these...
It's the commercial.
Make them the commercial. Make them the show.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's running the networks, but by not blocking that Nike swoosh, why would Nike give you money? Because you're getting them free advertising.
Now think about that when your other company. Could you imagine if they had Ford Motor Company or Cadillac, if they had Cadillac scrolled across the screen for 3 hours of a football program? So the guys at Cadillac, you got to get on your P's and Q's because Phil Knight's figured it out. I'm asking every corporation in America to go and get free advertising by having your product worn by every athlete. And I also want to say, Big C, as we get into this next segment, that G5 Textiles, I'm a rep with G5 Textiles when it comes to uniforms, whether you're at FC United, if you're in Europe, if you're in Africa, if you're in Latin America or the United States or Canada. Anywhere in the world, if you have a uniform, from Little League all the way up to professional $100 million athletes, order through Charlton and Big C Sports your emblem. Not only can we have you order your emblems through us, but we'll also donate money back to inner city programs to help fund computers, Big C. And when it comes to inner city programs, this segment is sponsored by BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org. Make a donation today. It's easy, it's fast and secure. And when it comes to promotions, contact Cynthia Evans of CYNN Entertainment. When it comes to promotions, she's the best in Northern California. So Big C, what I want to bring this up to is because we just talked about this thing with Nike. And they're getting this free advertising. And God bless them. But I would hope that corporate America would do the same thing that Jim Brown talked about for all people, along with Harry Edwards. I hate being left up to the black community only. And I know people like Warren Buffett or Phil Knight, they have tons of money. But I know they have philanthropy. Bill Gates has a lot of philanthropy. We're just suggesting don't be silent about it. If you're so brazen about having the Nike swoosh on everything you see on TV, why not take the same time to put the Nike swoosh or some money in a bank account for athletes? Because they need that too, Big C. And the more we are silent about it, the more that it happens. So I hope that we're not just calling out Phil Knight. I want Phil Knight to also sponsor Charlton and Big C Sports because we are the hottest growing sports show in the United States of America. So if we can say that, I challenge anyone. And I'm not saying this to be hubristic. I'm saying find any program that will talk to you more than about the score, because most programs want you to be a sycophant to the score. They want to hear the Giants beat the A's 7-5, the 49ers beat the Rams 27-15, or the Vikings beat the Packers 19-17. Okay, that's great, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Big C, you brought it to my mind, and I want to give you credit for it because I'm a sycophant for sports too. But you kept saying, Charlton, what about the social impact of these young black boys, because most of these athletes are black, especially when they started integration. That's when stadiums started doubling in sizes. Everyone gets paid except for the black athlete and his family. And except for that very, I think it's half or 1% that goes pro. Well, no, it's just free labor, Big C.
Athletes don't get paid.
No, they don't.
No, who was that kid that played out there in USA? Reggie Bush.
No, okay, well, that's a low blow, Big C.
Reggie Bush.
Hey, that was Kim Kardashian's money, okay?
I thought it was your house when I was looking at it on TV.
Okay, we thought that was Kim Kardashian's money. She's into all the athletes down in Southern California. A beautiful woman. But even Kim made $45 million last year selling lipstick and paraphernalia, Big C. She made me come up with the Charlton and Big C undergarments. We're going to have Charlton and Big C underwear. We're going to have Charlton and Big C hats and t-shirts, Big C. So what do you think about that, Big C? We can rival Kim Kardashian for a change.
Well, we might be able to ride along with the ACC, Charlton, when we talk about money in college sports. The ACC today announced that they're going to be getting their own networks.
What?
Here in 2016. So when you look at these mega conferences expanding and getting television and other sponsorship revenue, as we talk about, the athlete is left out, but the athlete is the motor that drives this force to allow these companies, these conferences, Charlton, to make all this money. You even look at the SEC is talking about expansion. Charlton, it's the most wealthiest, dominant conference in America financially, followed only by the Big Ten. And now that the ACC is getting their own television network, they may supplant USC. The Pac-12 is number 3. As a matter of fact, check something out before while we talk. I know you have a computer back there and stuff. You have electricity. You have to check and let me know where USC ranks in the top preseason 25. I want to know if they're a viable entity to put on television.
Some polls have them ranked as low as number 9. Other polls have them ranked as high as number 1 because they do return 16 starters. And
we're not talking about that high school California poll. Okay, we're not talking about in the city of Los Angeles. We're talking about that national poll.
Well, I think you good old boys down south, you love talking about your football. I know you guys play it 24 hours a day, but out here in California, there's a little bit more going on. And also, this final segment, Big C, is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. I'm a broker with One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders when it comes to final expense. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports, and especially tune in to the iHeartRadio network worldwide and simply Google Charlton and Big C Sports, and you can hear our program every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We cover the NFL along with college football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, every sport. The MMA is going to be really big on Charlton and Big C Sports. I have an interview coming up pretty soon with one of the guys that helped start the UFC with Dana White coming up pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. But also, Big C, I want to bring this to the attention of everyone because we have the Republican convention tonight. And this is not just about the sports business. We had the Oscars just a few months ago, and Chris Rock came on, and he talked about how black Americans are ostracized from the Oscars. So some people like Will Smith, they decided to boycott the Oscars. Now, they don't have other people who, maybe Meryl Streep should have been the one to come out and make that statement about inclusion in Hollywood. They didn't call Meryl Streep to do it. They didn't call some of the other prominent actors to come out and do it. Maybe Billy Crystal could have done it because he's someone that Muhammad Ali had a lot of respect for, and it takes everybody, Big C. But I want to close the show talking about this. We have this convention coming tonight. And I want to say my hearts and my condolences goes out to all the officers who've been slain over the last several weeks, and also the people in Europe who've been harmed by violence. Now, we know going through the football season coming up very soon, Big C, as well as baseball, it's hard to go into any stadium without a metal detector. I know that it's necessary. I know that it helps us stay safe. But Big C, something that still bugs me is when we tie this convention tonight and we tie what happened with the Oscars, for the most part, you're still going to see the power structures Caucasian is good old boy Caucasian, where I'm not indicting everybody. But instead of someone like LeBron James coming out saying Black Lives Matter, or Chris Paul saying Black Lives Matter, or Carmelo Anthony coming out saying Black Lives Matter, or Dwayne Wade, why not have a guy like Donald Trump come out and say that Black Lives Matter, or that all lives matter? Because if you're the pulpit, President Obama already talked about inclusion. I get tonight Donald Trump telling people if someone speaks out or interrupts you at a crowd, beat the hell out of him and he'll pay your medical fees. Now, what if some of these nuts who are shooting police officers took what he said to heart? At one point in time, do you tell someone who has a gun to beat the heck out of somebody and you're going to pay their fees? I think that's so irresponsible, whether you're Republican or Democrat, Big C. Am I out of bounds or did I score a touchdown, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
You know, you hit the nail on the head, Charlton. And I found a moment, and loss of life at any time, Charlton, is not a thing that anybody wants to have to deal with. They paraded one of the mothers from one of the soldiers that was lost in the Benghazi attack. You know, asking how could Hillary Clinton
have to see that Benghazi happen? Is that what she was saying, Big C?
Yeah, you know, how could, you know, the son be lost and not defended in Benghazi? You know, what I would like to see the Republicans tonight is counter that, is ask why did the war start over there, period. Bring some of those mothers of those 6,000 soldiers that we lost during the Iraq war over there, the Afghanistan war. Bring those mothers out there and ask the Republican Party, how could they let that happen to their children and not have a recourse? You know, we talk about lives matter here in America. Americans' lives matter regardless of wherever they are in the world, Charlton. But don't use it as a political peg saying that only 4 people lost their lives in Afghanistan or Benghazi or Iraq, Charlton. We lost hundreds, thousands of soldiers, and we had many more maimed for life, Charlton. So don't use a political platform to take and glorify the loss of 4 lives, saying that it was because of one individual. That individual that they're blaming did not start the war, Charles.
And see, Big C.
So, you know, be honest about how things happen. That's the real talk.
And see, I think that's so powerful because as an African-American male, I grew up around guys who call themselves the Bloods and the Crips. I also knew some skinheads, and when we played football, we were all one solid family. So if you're an athlete and you're too scared to make a difference because you're afraid to lose your endorsement, then ask your kids to speak up about what makes it safe for them. If money is more important than your kids feeling safe when they're going into any environment, then just remain silent. Like guys like Michael Jordan, I love him as an athlete, but as an advocate, what a waste of time with all the power he has to be so silent, unlike Muhammad Ali. If you're afraid, just be like Muhammad Ali. So this is not about blaming. Our solutions is about reading 60 minutes a day. I know the NFL came out with this slogan called Play 60 Minutes a Day, and that's great. But what if you could read 60 minutes a day? I think that would open our minds for all kids, whether it's a book or a newspaper, or you can even Google to read something. There's also a book called The 4 Agreements. It's about a practical guide to your personal freedom. People need to educate themselves, and when you get caught up in the sports business, and I hate how the young black kids are exploited, and it's systemic. It's not just Charlton and Big C talking about it because we're the only ones that really do for more than a day. I hope that the parents would start asking these coaches, show me your graduation rate before you recruit my kid. Show me how many kids that come under your tutelage and graduate at Big C. As we head to the Republican convention tonight, and we talk about solutions to bring people together, and we want to pray for everybody, but sports is more integrated than the church, Big C. Most churches are segregated. So I know it's great when preachers come on and they want to pray for people, but the sports industry will bring people who don't like each other together, and they can realize that we're all brothers. Big C, I give you the last minute on how we can go forward and keeping all of our kids safe because all lives matter, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, moving forward, we will always come back to that round table of education. That's where we get social interaction. That comes from education. I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about what the American platform is built on. We're built on intelligence. And when we lose that intelligence and only worry about athletics, then we take steps back in life and in society, Charlton. And don't worry about your child because he's 6'10", saying, okay, now he's going to become a millionaire and we're going to bypass college. Oh, wow, he just got a knee injury.
Yeah.
And his career is over.
Yeah.
As a parent, think about what you owe your child. You owe them the rites of passage through education and tutelage. That's what you have to do. Don't worry about them getting that big paycheck. You're going down and get your hair and nails done, and you get to sit in a draft room, Charlton.
Right.
Go worry about what he's doing on the academic level when he's in college. Hold that coach accountable when he recruits your son and daughter that they're going to get a degree. And this is something that the NCAA needs to look into. For every athlete that receives a scholarship and fails and flunks out of school, then that university needs to lose a scholarship. That point, universities will be a little more strict and stern about education with the athletes that they recruit, Charles.
Well, Big C, now you're scaring some people, especially you talked about the SEC, their own network, and I think you also mentioned that you have the Pac-12
ACC coming along.
ACC coming along.
Network this year also.
Yeah, they want the money too.
Second in the National Football Championship last year.
Yeah, and
also was in the Basketball National Championship. So the ACC is a viable conference.
Yeah, and they all want the money, just like Charlton and Big C Sports. You know, we do have our theme song by Mr. Anon, so I thank him for coming up with that, Big C. But I also want to say to everybody worldwide, if you're listening to Charlton and Big C Sports, I want you to tell your kids to read 60 minutes a day. I want you to hold coaches accountable when they come into your living room and they tell you they want your kids. I would just ask you to listen to our politicians, no matter who you like, Democrat or Republican. But when someone's running for president and they're telling people to beat the heck out of somebody, and it's actually happening when officers are being harmed, what is Donald Trump going to say to those families? Because maybe some of these knuckleheads that harm law enforcement, they may have heard some of his speech. So every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, you can follow Charlton and Big C Sports. We promise to keep it real worldwide, from Africa to Australia to Russia and China and, of course, the great United States of America. Listen to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. Just download the app and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.